It's getting to a point in this season where no one is even surprised to see the Jets getting blown out anymore. This team is horrible. There's dysfunction all around, from top all the way down to Aaron Rodgers. Woody Johnson, horrible owner. Joe Douglas was a horrible GM before he got fired. And Aaron Rodgers is a horrible quarterback. They need to clean house and get a fresh restart in New York. A lot of this dysfunction started back in training camp. The New York Jets allow Aaron Rodgers to come and go as he pleases. He's won one Super Bowl in 20 years, but they treat him like a god. They allow him to do whatever he wants. He calls the shots. If he doesn't feel like showing up, they say, you know what, so be it. We got to back up for a reason. That's where a lot of this dysfunction starts. At the beginning of the season in summer training camp, Aaron Rodgers didn't feel like showing up. He wanted Tyrod Taylor to take all the quarterback snaps because he was out for personal reasons. We all later found out what those personal reasons were of him shooting his Netflix show. That's where the season began to fall apart before it even started. All the other quarterbacks of his generation that switched teams at the end of their career, Rivers, Manning, Brady, we never heard anything about anything that Aaron Rodgers is doing. So the fact that he thinks this is okay is a real shame on him. Yesterday was supposed to be a very successful day for Aaron Rodgers. He was supposed to have his 500th career touchdown pass, something that only 4 other quarterbacks in NFL history have done, but they got routed yesterday. The only touchdown they scored was by their backup, Tyrod Taylor. Aaron Rodgers didn't get his 500th career touchdown, and after today, he may never get that opportunity again. On paper, the Jets should be one of the best teams in the NFL. You got Breece Hall, you got Big Braylon Allen. He personally reminds me a lot of Derrick Henry. You got Devontae Adams, who Aaron Rodgers wanted so bad. You got Garrett Wilson. You have a star-studded team. So where has this season went? A lot more of the dysfunction started in Week 5 when the Jets, for no reason, fired Robert Saleh. That was their overseas game in the UK. There was a lot of reports that came out that after they lost that game to the Vikings, that Woody Johnson's friends were making fun of him for that game. A lot of you guys don't know, Woody Johnson, the Jets owner, actually works for the Trump administration. He is the ambassador for the UK, so he will not be a part of this team for the next 4 years. From 2016 to 2020, he was not a part of this team. His brother ran the team. His brother is just as bad as him. So he will be gone the next 4 years. But for this season in particular, in Week 5, Woody Johnson called his own shots. After that game, they fired Robert Saleh, who was a very good coach. He wasn't a phenomenal coach. He wasn't an offense coordinator, but he was good enough. That's where this season took the biggest hit, after the Woody Johnson made that decision on his own because his buddies made fun of him. Jeff Ulbrich, the guy they brought in, I'm afraid long-term this season is going to have a negative effect on his coaching career. He was not ready to be a head coach in the NFL. He's the interim coach for the New York Jets right now. He was the defensive coordinator, and he's not in any position right now to be a head coach in the NFL, especially for a team like the New York Jets. This is a bad look on him, but unfortunately, he has very little to do with this season. A few weeks after firing Robert Saleh, it was their first matchup against the Buffalo Bills. They went up in New York. They should have won that game. Horrible special teams is the sole reason they lost that game. And I get New York, it's hard to kick. You got the wind, you got the rain, you got all that stuff. It's not an easy job, and I'm not sitting here saying I can do it, but that's the sole reason they lost that game. They also lost that game because Aaron Rodgers threw a late game interception, and he blamed the receiver, Mike Williams. Never once in my life did I hear anyone call out their receiver, especially a veteran guy like Mike Williams. Mike Williams used to be a superstar for the Los Angeles Chargers. They had to move off of him for cap reasons. He signed a 1-year, $15 million deal with this team. He's a phenomenal receiver. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers had no idea how to use him. The fact that he publicly blamed Mike Williams for running the wrong route is an absolute shame on him. That's ridiculous. That was the last snap he ever took for the New York Jets. So you know what they did? They said, you know what? We're going to trade him for a bag of chips to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They trade him for a late 7th-round conditional pick. Essentially, that pick is going to end up to be nothing. Aaron Rodgers wanted somebody else, and they got that somebody else. And to no one's surprise, a couple weeks after that, the New York Jets traded a 3rd-round pick next year to get Devontae Adams. And that was supposed to be the soul-changing moment of the season where this team was going to go on a magical run, the reuniting of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. But unfortunately, that was not the case. In their first matchup on Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers, out of all teams, It was a very hyped game. It was supposed to be a big emotional night for the New York Jets. It was Russell Wilson's first game, Davante Adams' first game with the Jets. They got routed in Pittsburgh, and they looked just as bad and just as dysfunctional. Aaron Rodgers had an L on his hand in blood. I don't know how that happened, but that just describes the New York Jets season in that moment, seeing the blood L on his hand. Ever since getting Davante Adams, they've won 2 games. One on Halloween night against the Houston Texans and the other against the Jacksonville Jaguars just a few weeks ago against Mac Jones. And then seemingly after all that, their GM got fired. After the election, it was announced Woody Johnson would be rejoining the Trump administration. So they're cleaning house. They ended up firing the GM, Joe Douglas, a little early, saying, you know what, we're going to move off of you. We're just going to go ahead and move off of you now. There was reports came out and said Woody Johnson's teenager son, 17-year-old son, runs the team. After getting fired, Joe Douglas went out and started exposing the team. The biggest moment where everyone heard from is that Joe Douglas had a trade last offseason with the then Denver Broncos to acquire Jerry Jeudy in a trade. But Woody Johnson and his son did not like Jerry Jeudy because his Madden rating was too low. His Madden rating was too low. Yes, you heard that right. In that same interview, Joe Douglas said how Woody Johnson's son decided who got the game balls for the New York Jets. After a couple of their few wins that they have, that their 17-year-old son picked who got the game balls. That is absolutely ridiculous. The reason I believe those reports about the Madden ratings is because they treat this team like it's a Madden roster. We just had one of the best draft classes in NFL history. With the 11th pick, the New York Jets select Olu Fashanu. He's a phenomenal tackle out of Penn State. He never once allowed a sack at Penn State. They've been having him play guard this season. That is absolutely ridiculous. Unfortunately, you can't plug and play players like it is Madden. You have to learn and develop in that position, and he has struggled mightily. It's part of the reason why Aaron Rodgers has been sacked so many times this season. They need to move off of Tyron Smith because he cannot stay healthy. He's washed. Put Olu Fashanu back at tackle. That is absolutely ridiculous to think that he's playing at guard right now. One more note to add on to this Jets season in particular. They went out and made a trade for Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick is a solid defensive end. He can go out there and put up some numbers for you and get after the quarterback. He refused to play for this team, and they did not work with him one bit. He specifically said he wanted a contract extension before he got traded. The Jets said, sure, we'll give you one. They got him in a trade and then said, oh, well, maybe we can watch you play first. He pissed them off. They pissed him off. It was a really bad thing for both sides. Why would you go out and make that trade if you never had real intentions of signing him to what he wanted? It's been a complete disaster of a season, and I could go on for another 20 minutes about all the little stuff that this team did to those players and what those players did. Those players gave up yesterday against the Buffalo Bills. They said, you know what, we're done. They're ready for this season to be over. They have guys that are not going to be on this team next year. Hassan Reddick won't be on this team. DJ Reed won't be on this team. They're going to move off of Aaron Rodgers because he's no good anymore. He has 1 year left on his deal. They're going to cut him. They need a fresh start. They're going to have a top 5 overall draft pick, top 10 at least, depending on a few other teams. They need a fresh start. They always go for the big shot, try to make the big move. They need to go slow. They need to build through the draft. It's going to be okay. I know if you are a Jets fan, this probably sucks, and you probably think it's always the same song and dance. There is a lot of potential with this team. They have a phenomenal young roster. They need to go out, get somebody like Mike Vrabel, get a real leader of men. You don't have to have the best roster if you have a really good coach. Look at the Chargers. With all that being said, I do think the Jets have somewhat of a bright future once they move off of Aaron Rodgers. They're going to get a real GM. They're going to get a real front office now that Woody Johnson's going back to work with Donald Trump. I see brighter days ahead, and other than the Buffalo Bills, you can compete with the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots in that division. So this may suck, but I think long-term you guys will be okay.